Hey guys, welcome back to another Call of Duty Modern Warfare video from a Battlefield veteran's perspective. Of course, I started playing Call of Duty when Modern Warfare came out because I was kind of looking for a placeholder of a first-person shooter to play until Battlefield came out with a more modern shooter. I did enjoy Battlefield 5, but I really wanted to play more of a modern game, so this was really my first introduction to playing Call of Duty. If you're coming across this video as a fan of Call of Duty, I want to welcome you guys here. I'm going to assume that you guys have probably watched a lot of your favorite YouTubers and streamers talk about the game. So I can add a little bit to what they have been saying, but I do agree with what many of them have been saying, that Vanguard does feel very much like Modern Warfare as far as the weapons. The sound engine is probably the one thing that is not similar to Modern Warfare, and that's a bit discouraging because it reminds me a lot of Cold War. And one of the confusing things about having played some additional games like Warzone as well as Cold War is I don't understand why the developers don't have an option of stereo or stereo with surround. Since I was just starting playing in Modern Warfare, I did spend a lot of time listening to original core players, fellow YouTubers, and streamers talk about the game and how some of the mechanics had changed. So my distinctions between Modern Warfare and Vanguard aren't really too disparaging because they felt very much the same. So, but I can relate to what people were saying when it comes to the mini-maps. Also, the introduction of slide canceling and sliding, the bunny hopping and the corner jumping and those sorts of things were always kind of a curiosity to me as to why people played that way. I didn't have any particular issues with doors or windows. That's kind of something that we had in Battlefield, but I mean, it did feel a little bit different in Modern Warfare versus Battlefield. But in the Vanguard beta, it really felt a lot just like Modern Warfare. And so the differences that I noticed too that people have pointed out was the mini-map does not show unsuppressed weapons, which I suppose that could be an issue. My expectations of the games aren't particularly high because it is kind of a arcadey game where I can just pretty much just run around and shoot things, which is what I enjoy doing. I like the arcade aspect to Call of Duty, so I can understand why this may frustrate some of the OGs. But I think in just my simplest way of putting this into perspective for you guys is that it would appear that Activision, as a publisher, as many other publishers would want, is to have as many people playing their game as possible. And to do that, you have to be able to allow for a wider audience to be playing your game. And so you're going to introduce mechanics into it that maybe gives people who have never played the game at least a level playing field, as it were. So what it could be best described as is that the OGs, your core players, and so forth may feel a little disenfranchised by the fact that certain mechanics within the game really aren't indicative to what they were accustomed to or what they were used to playing as, and so now they're more appealing to this wider audience than the core players, because there's probably going to be a lot more players out there, as we saw when the introduction of Warzone came out. It was a free-to-play game, and that's when we saw tons and tons and tons of people probably playing Modern Warfare for the first time. It was supposed to be like the biggest selling, and I said Modern Warfare to coincide with Warzone, but to say that as a result of Warzone, more people probably started playing Call of Duty for the first time, which introduced a lot of people to the game. And I would have to say that the Warzone mechanics do feel quite nice. Now, they do adopt a lot of that from Modern Warfare, but the mechanics in Warzone seems to appeal more to core players because of that skill factor. And that skill factor being that you are rewarded for playing tactically, having a situational awareness, being aware of lanes, being aware of headshots, and those sorts of things, where the multiplayer in both Modern Warfare, Cold War, and maybe Vanguard was a little different. You know, they made a little difference in shifting of how things behave. And in Vanguard, they also introduced flinching. Now, for us in Battlefield, we are very accustomed to the flinching mechanic, but the way they introduced it in Vanguard, it was just very weird and felt very awkward. But I can certainly understand why that would be a major issue for core players, because it's not something that they're typically accustomed to. They're typically accustomed to being able to do what I call a one-on-one kind of a lead dance and being able to try to outgun one another by virtue of skill. In other words, skill being, maintaining that reticle on your opponent's head or areas where you can do the most damage. So I can totally relate to how they feel when it regards that type of gameplay. But in my opinion, I think Activision is just trying to reach a wider audience, which may be disenfranchising core players. Because I listen to a lot of you guys, fellow YouTubers and so forth, talking about how, mini maps, gameplay, map flow, all these sorts of things really just seem to cater more towards a more casual player versus a skill base, and how much more of the core players really appreciate and value Warzone because it allows them to have a little bit more of that skill-based feel. And I really enjoyed Warzone because as a Battlefield player, the maps are much larger, there's a lot more activity, and I was also a very big plunder player. It just felt like it was just fun to get in there and just try to collect as much money as I could as I played, which it gave me something to do, because typically in Battlefield, of course, we're out, playing, capturing objectives and things like that, so I always like to feel engaged when I'm playing. I don't have any objections to the Warzone Battle Royale at all. It does feel a lot slower, much more paced, much more methodical, and that's fine. I can totally get why maybe some of the core players are more hip to that style of play because, obviously it requires far more skill, far more situational awareness. You have to be a lot more precise with your weapons, and you're rewarded more for that type of skill play versus trying to get around a smaller map where mechanics have been changed to appeal to casual players who even during a flinch might be able to shoot you in the head and then kill you, whereas in other mechanics in games, it may not have happened with that level of ease. So I can kind of relate to how some of those players may feel about that, but for me overall, I'm just playing really to have fun, to be engaged, and I don't mind the maps, I don't mind the way the mechanics have been introduced and so forth. So, as I said, it's a game that was a filler for me until Battlefield came out. But I do like and appreciate and value the opinions and thoughts and the very well articulated outlines by some of my fellow YouTube creators who play COD, who are the core players of the game. So I certainly value and appreciate their thoughts on it. But for me, it just felt very much like Modern Warfare. The sound engine was terrible. I didn't like the way it sounded. It reminded me a lot of Cold War. And when you shot your weapon and hit your target, it sounded like rain on cardboard to me. And then, of course, just sound issues overall, how the distance just didn't correlate. Like, someone could be right next to you firing, and yet you couldn't hear them, but someone could be across the map shooting you or, firing at you with a sniper rifle, and you could hear that. And just the weirdness of the sounds. Like when people would get the dogs, you would hear the dog whistle, and you would look around and there'd be nobody around, but you could hear the whistle like the guy was standing right next to you, and you didn't know whether they were the enemy whistle or your teammates' whistles. And because everyone is the same, it is so funny. It's your team and the enemy team, and everyone looks the same. So you got to pay extra attention to what's going on around you, because you're not going to be able to determine, in some cases, who the enemy is. So, I guess in some cases you just fire just in case. You just don't ever know. So that kind of felt kind of weird that they made it just kind of very, there was no distinction between factions. There was no like, okay, that's the team that's my enemy. Everyone kind of was very similar. But overall, the experience was interesting. I hope that the core players will be able to appeal to the development team to get some of those changes that they're asking for. But I still believe and maintain that Activision just simply wants as many players as possible playing their game, and so they're willing to introduce these really bizarre mechanics or methodologies, whatever you want to call them, to be able to appeal to a more casual group of people. But for me, I enjoyed it. I thought it was, pretty fun. I can take it or leave it, and so that leaves me a lot of room for indifference. I suppose you could say that, I'm really indifferent about it. I'm really looking forward to Battlefield 2042. So, but would I recommend the game to people? At least maybe not right now. Just maybe kind of wait and see what the development team is willing to change. But if you're willing to play with the mechanics that have been introduced, then, maybe you'll do it. If you're a big-time core fan player, maybe you'll still buy the game nonetheless. It's not like a terrible game, I guess, from the perspective of a first-person shooter. I know some of the core players may disagree on the fact that if they're dedicated COD players, they're certainly going to have a higher expectation than I do about what they expect from the game and what sort of mechanics and designs it should have. But the weapons felt great, and the movement felt pretty good. The sliding was a bit exaggerated, and as I said earlier, the sound is terrible, so that's going to definitely need to be addressed. But I think that if you're wanting a comparison, it felt very much like Modern Warfare. So I can't compare it to anything before Modern Warfare because I've never played Call of Duty up until Modern Warfare. I do think Warzone probably has some of the best mechanics, the best feel, the best gunplay, the best flow of a game because as a Battlefield player, I'm more accustomed to a larger map. So all the CQC of Call of Duty just kind of changes my whole dynamic play style and mindset when it comes to how I play Call of Duty. But I can certainly relate to what some of the OGs are saying about the game. I'm sorry for you guys if you were hoping that maybe some of the newer things that was learned from Modern Warfare and learned from Cold War and Warzone would be in this game. And I think there is the potential for that to happen. But I think where there's going to be a disconnect is the fact that Activision is really going to want as many people playing the game as possible. And because, of course, they're facing that lawsuit from California as well as now from the feds that they may need to be able to make games to get as many people to play their product as possible because they're going to need that cash. So that's pretty much my just general thoughts about the game. I did enjoy it, and it was pretty fun. It was something to do. I am still looking forward to Battlefield 2042, but nonetheless, if you guys want to tell me what your thoughts were about the beta, if you played it, how it feels to you. If you're an OG player, a core player, I would love to hear your thoughts on the game and whether or not you may purchase it. I have not bought it. I actually held off. I almost came close to buying it. I do enjoy making video shorts with the game. Some of the video shorts have done really well, so I want to thank all you guys who have checked those out and stopped by for checking out the video shorts because I plan on doing more. I'll probably buy the game once it actually does go on sale, so I'll definitely probably be picking it up just kind of as a tradition now for me. But certainly a lot of my attention is going to be on Battlefield 2042. And, I hope you guys enjoy the game if you end up getting it and enjoy just the style. And I'm sure you're probably looking forward to Pacific Warzone because I most certainly am as well. So if you haven't already, guys, below this video, you'll find my various social media links where I do daily posts. And, of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, my video shorts. And appearing right there on the screen, that will be the channel icon to subscribe if you want additional content on first-person shooters, especially when Battlefield comes out. You guys can subscribe there and click notifications so you know when there's content released. And I will see you guys in the next video.